Hello. Welcome back to Maverick Mind, and thanks so much again for joining me this week for today's show. I'm so happy to be back here with you all, and a massive warm welcome to if any of you guys here are listening for the first time. Such a joy to be here with you all, and I'm really excited to connect with you. This week's conversation was such a goodie. Oh my goodness. We talk about so many different things in this show, so that there's so much advice and so much richness and so much kind of mindful contemplation that this is honestly such a great episode, and I really hope you enjoy it. This week I am joined by the very lovely Missoni Lanza. Missoni is a singer-songwriter turned studio owner, creative director and movement specialist. So she is a Pilates instructor. She's owned various different Pilates studios, all of which have done really well, have become very popular within the spaces that she lives in, and she has kind of become a figurehead or a known entity within the movement space as somebody who can create really beautiful, transformational, immersive experiences through movement and self-exploration. So she kind of combines movement with this really empowering way of guiding people through music and the kind of deep anatomical knowledge that she has to really create these really transformative classes. And this is something that's so interesting because obviously you guys know me, that I'm a yoga teacher as well as a coach and various other things. And you might not associate a podcast like this where we're talking about creativity, you might not really associate it with something like Pilates or, in my case, yoga or anything like that. However, it's probably been the most vital thing that I have discovered to unlock my creativity and to really kind of nurture my creative energy has been movement, and more specifically mindful movement. And I know that within our creative industries, within our creative communities, that mindset and that knowledge is really becoming way more normalized. I think that we haven't always associated people that are creative with people that are necessarily fit, healthy, or ones that are kind of known to move, except maybe like musicians and things like that. But our creative energy is our vital energy. Our creative energy is the same as our vitality, the kind of the energy that keeps us alive, the energy that keeps us moving, and the energy that we use then to birth new life as in human into the world, and new life as in new ideas, new innovations, and new kind of experiences for others to share. That really comes through our bodies, and having a connection to your body not only increases that feeling of vitality, it opens up the channels for that creative energy to thrive, and it opens up some quietness within you where you can become more receptive to your ideas. So that is why I was so excited to have Missoni on here, because not only is she such a great singer-songwriter, but she's an incredible studio owner, entrepreneur, visionary, maverick, and she also has this really deep knowledge of creativity and the kind of the struggles that creatives really go through, because it's her lived experience too, We cover so many different things, as I said, from movement as a tool for tapping into your courage and creativity, stepping out of the shadows and allowing yourself to be seen as a creator. That's huge. I know that's something so many of us struggle with on the daily. Following your vision regardless of other people's opinions. We talk about choosing to change paths when sometimes it doesn't seem that logical. For example, she shifted from being a singer-songwriter to being a Pilates instructor, and her story behind that, I think, is something that a lot of you guys already resonate with. Curating transformative and memorable experiences for people, whether you're hosting a class or whether you're curating an exhibition or a really incredible concert or a dance show. What we're here for is to guide people through experiences, whatever that might be. So her knowledge and wisdom of that, I think, will be so invaluable to you guys. And above all, we're talking about how creating an unforgettable brand and why competition is nothing. So there are so many twists and turns we take on this in this conversation. I really, really think that a lot of you will get so much juice out of it. So as always, let me know in the DMs or in the comments within your ratings and reviews of what you think of this show. And of course, let Missoni know too. I know she'll love to connect with you guys as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. Missoni Lanza, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. Hey, Missoni, a massive, massive, massive welcome to Maverick Mind, the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Ellie. It's nice to be here and be able to talk to you. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, me too. So your story's kind of had so many different layers. I know that you kind of started within music and being a singer-songwriter, and then you've gone into more finding freedom through movement. So I'd love, I think, to kind of paint the picture for the listeners of um, the journey kind of to where you are now. I know that's kind of a big, broad question. And if your journey through all those iterations, or some of them anyway.
Yeah, I'll make it like the Cliff Notes version, just so we don't
Yeah.
tax on forever. But I actually, growing up, I thought I was always going to be in music as a songwriter, composer. Went to school for orchestration and composing and psychology because I wanted to learn what music would stimulate the mind and emotions when I wrote movie scores. And I got my friend recommended that I get certified in Pilates because I've been doing Pilates since I was 15. I got into it from a car accident, and I got obsessed with it during a car accident, but that's a long story. But I got sucked in the rabbit hole, so I started doing music less and less and less. Got really involved in Pilates, and I had a really interesting crossroads where I realized I like music is so spiritual for me, and I didn't want to resent the art of the craft. And I felt like, in a strange way, I always thought my calling was music, but then I realized my calling was really in movement and Pilates because the universe just kept putting all these opportunities in front of me, like a big shining light, like, no, you got to go in this direction. This is where you have to go. So I've just been following that journey ever since. And I think we're in 15, 15 or 14 years of teaching. It's been a minute. So we're still trekking away.
Yeah, I love that. That's so interesting as well. I think that often because especially when you have a pulling towards some kind of channel of creative expression, whatever that is, art, music, dance, whatever, from a young age, and you go to school for that thing, I think then you do kind of go into that shift of turning what was a hobby into a quote unquote real job. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a shift for a lot of people. And I think that that's a really powerful kind of understanding of yourself to come to say, do you know what? Actually, like if I followed that direction, I think I would fall out of love with the thing that I love the most. And that actually, hold on a second, maybe there's this other thing that I can channel my creativity into in a different way that will kind of bring my voice to light in a different manner, I suppose.
Yeah, I think when you're inclined to be a creative person in a very, and I know you might resonate with this quite a bit, you get pulled a lot creativity, and almost like you get a lot of, uh, like it's almost like being a visionary, like you can adapt into different fields, but it takes a lot of self-discipline and awareness to know what is going to be the most worth your time and energy. And that's been a big challenge and learning venture for me of is knowing of where do I put my time and energy in creatively, and how do I structure these things so they become a little bit more harmonious. And that took a lot of time because sometimes Pilates, it's so structured in some ways, And I definitely was craving these creative assets and these or facets. And I found when you kind of bring in these different elements of creating experiences, which is what I love to do, or really trying to blend a playlist with movement and kind of getting people to move with the music. There's ways that you can bring in all of your gifts and your interests and your inspirations into that one realm. It's just kind of opening your mind to it. And it takes time and years of trial and error, you know?
For sure. I was just thinking there that it's actually really interesting that you kind of started or you were going down the path towards composing like film scores. And then now you're going more into like experiences, because I think that kind of music is a whole journey and experience on its own. It's like that genre of music is the kind that really just envelops your whole body and takes you along a story and takes you on a journey. And now you're doing the same thing, but just in a different kind of way. And I love that kind of
Just
mirror.
tone down. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not composing the music anymore, but I love putting together the playlists and getting to a place where you can have these transcendent kind of
Yeah.
class experiences or movement experiences and putting them together in events and or they're more immersive experiences because it's bringing people together and kind of just asking questions and kind of diving deeper into whatever it is we're exploring. And I think music is such a catalyst to untapping blocked parts of ourselves or bringing inspiration or kind of bringing the momentum. So, and I guess, yeah, in a way, it really has developed into this cool interlaced fabric of what I'm doing. Like the music has. I didn't even think about that till you brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just kind of suddenly came to me. And I was like, oh, that's a nice little thread. I love that. Um, and you said you kind of came to Pilates from a car accident. Um,
Yeah.
but also like that's Pilates is something that I love. I mean, everybody listening to this knows that I'm a yoga teacher, but Pilates and like reformer is something that I really, really enjoy and something I find so empowering. And it's similar to yoga in the way that it's very, very mindfulness kind of bringing. But it's all also like a whole journey through the body. And I think a really powerful way also to tap into your creative energy and kind of get into feeling that creative force moving around the body. So again, I'd love to know your journey into Pilates, like from the car accident, and then when did you decide to become a teacher?
Well, so going way, way back, I got very obsessed with Pilates when I was 19 when I was in a car accident. I started Pilates when I was 15 for when I was having some back pain. And it was very superficial why I fell into it. It's like, oh, all these celebrities are doing it. And they say that's so good for you. They say it's good for your back. So I'm going to
Yeah.
take Pilates. I was very fortunate that so young I got exposed to Pilates because no one was really doing Pilates on um, a very popular level there. It was mainly like either if you were a dancer or a gymnast or something, you were probably doing Pilates, but just to kind of walk off the street as a 15-year-old, not very common. And when I was in a head-on collision, I had a really fantastic instructor. She kind of helped me kind of repair my body through Pilates. And she was so creative. And that's what really fascinated me because I was so used to the choreography and I loved how I'm very ADHD. So I loved how it focused my mind and it turned off all the outside noise because I had to pay attention to the details, which was really fascinating for me. But she would incorporate all these different props to help me. And I thought, gosh, that's cool. Like, how is she coming up with all this stuff? And I kind of started diving down the rabbit hole and I would come to Pilates all the time. And at that one point, my one friend who was a teacher there, she's like, Sonny, you're coming in the studio almost every day and you're like working out with us. Why don't you get your teacher training certification and I'll give you a job? I was like, I can't teach. I can't teach at all. I can't even explain things because I've always been kind of told from teachers that I was kind of a lost cause, that I was just all over the place because they just didn't understand that I was ADHD. And if I wasn't challenged, I'd walk out of a room or, it's one of those kids.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening will be the same.
Yeah, I was just like, they just didn't get me, which is fine.
Yeah.
But, and I did it. And I found out I was actually very it was kind of, it just came naturally. I think also because I just had a great teacher growing up. So I did Pilates for so long, but it was very intuitive for me. And I was able to pick things up really quickly, even when I didn't fully have a comprehensive understanding of the anatomy at that time. I didn't really dive into that later when I met some people in Seattle. But I realized like, okay, this is like, I have an intuition for this. Like I have a natural skill set for this. And I was actually helping people and seeing that transformative results. And the more I got into it and the more I delved into my craft, I kind of realized like, yeah, I think I need to do this because I think a lot of times people are not seen or heard, and I'm very patient with people, and I didn't realize having patience is a gift. And so, like as you get older and you see what the landscape is, you realize like, okay, like yeah, I need to really be solid in this sphere because there's not a lot of people with all of those things together, and I got to kind of stand in it even when I get frustrated. you know, it's almost like when you get in the service, I mean, it's probably the same with yoga. Like when you're in the service industry, we're leaving our stuff at the door and we're here to serve the people in front of us. It has nothing to do with us. We're just guides,
Mm.
And that's kind of when I realized like this is a responsibility, and I'm holding on to it with as much integrity as I can, and as I move forward, and being very conscientious of the choices I make because of that responsibility.
Yeah, for sure.
So
It's definitely a responsibility when you're the one guiding people I think in any light, it could be like guiding a class if you're a yoga teacher, Pilates teacher, what fill in the blank. But I think it's also if you're in a place where you're moving along the path of, let's call it Maverick because it's like the name of the podcast, but you're a visionary
that's
human
a good
being.
name.
And you're a visionary human being, you don't realize actually that when you're that person, you are in a space of leadership. You're kind of
Mhm.
bringing your vision to life, whether that is through your own artwork, whether that is through the way you teach, whether that is through singing a song on a stage and kind of putting your message out there. You're bringing other people along with you. And I think that to bring people along your vision with you, whether that's intentionally or not, building a fan base or customer base or client base or anything, it is a big responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's an identity a lot of us really struggle stepping into because it's not something that we really feel like, right? When you're a creative person, it's a very insular experience. It's very like, I'm doing my own thing, I'm creating in this way, or it's my artwork and things like that. But when you go to share it and you go to put it out there in terms of a class or in terms of putting your work online or something, or putting yourself out there online, um,
Yeah.
it's a real identity shift. I mean, do you think that's something that you experienced, or do you think it's just sort of because you could teach, it's something you stepped into in that role quite easily?
Well, it's funny. I have this, and I'm not a mom. I have a dog, but I have a very
That's a kind
maternal
of a mom.
instinct. Yeah, yeah. But I'm very maternal with my clients and with people that I work with. I just really want to take care of everybody. That's always been one of my traits. And I think when I show up for people in a class or in environments like that, it's just me stepping into like a responsibility thing. Like, okay, I got to take care of these people and make sure they leave the room feeling inspired, feeling good. I personally love to educate clients more about their bodies so they have more ownership and autonomy over themselves, because I think it's so important in this current medical landscape that you can be your best advocate, because sometimes things get lost in translation, and the more you understand about your body and can kind of take care of yourself, the less dependent you are on outside resources. Like I'm not saying that the medical industry is not needed, it is, but for certain things, it's nice to know like, oh, my back hurts, but you can learn about how the fascial system works, or just how tight your feet are, or different movement patterns that you have. Like, oh, I bet this is this, or why don't I try stretching this? So you're saving yourself a lot of time and codependency by just taking that ownership of understanding your own body. That's really fun for me to show to clients. But I'm like a natural introvert. Like, so I don't naturally like to step in the light. In fact, it's been a very hard journey for me to even just put myself online. It's nuts. I've hid behind businesses all these years. Like my first partnership, I highlighted my first partner, and then I found another business partner, and I tried to highlight her. And I just find all these people to highlight because I don't like to highlight myself. I like to lift everyone up, and that's when I realized like I need to step in my own power and just be comfortable in myself because people are happy with what I'm sharing with them. And I need to stop hiding because I tell everybody else to own their power, be expansive, step in their light. I should do the same. So that's what I'm trying, that's what I'm transitioning from like the last, I'm going to say even like the last 3 years, I've been on that journey to slowly get to that of just shedding these shells to hide behind. Because like even when I was a musician, I had a guitar. I hid behind a guitar. I like when you're on a stage, you're still separated from people, even though you're in front of them. There's still that space for the introvert kind of way. So I'm just learning to get comfortable with being exposed, which is
Yeah.
difficult. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely difficult. I think that's something most creatives do struggle with. I think we're a lot of us, I won't say everybody, but majority are introverted in some
Yeah.
degree, to some level. I think the creative process is an, as I said, it's an introverted process. It's like you have to turn yourself inward to express outward. And then it's like you're standing around naked when you share that thing or when you share yourself because it's whoa vulnerability. But you've kind of danced with doing that, as you said, like you've had multiple businesses. You might have put someone else in the spotlight, but you were still going out there and doing your own thing. And then that's kind of, would you say that's kind of where you realized that you were really passionate about creating experiences for other people?
I, you know, I didn't realize how much I loved it until we did a retreat, my previous business and business partner. And then I started doing little pop-ups at hotels and doing like mat classes. And there's just a certain energy when you have no equipment and it's just you and the mat in these beautiful environments. Like, because it's just so raw. It's just so honest. And it's just like you have to face those challenges in your body. And I love watching people like push through these challenging moments at the end, like have this moment of feeling so much pride because they didn't realize that they could do it. And I think when you're surrounded by people who are pushing through with you and just trying to keep going, you find that motivation within yourself you didn't know you had because you have a community that's with you and doing it with you. So um, it's like this wonderful opportunity to really realize what we're capable of, that we can do hard things, that we can do more than we thought was possible. And when you do that in a community base, it's just so much energetic and it's just electric. And people are just like, oh my gosh, let's do it again. And I live for that. It's so much fun. I love seeing people feel like badasses. So I don't know if I can swear, so whoopsies.
Oh, you can definitely swear. Don't worry.
Okay.
Do not worry. This is an unfiltered space. Say whatever you want to say.
Sorry, listeners. A little Italian sass comes out here and there.
We love to hear it. We love to hear it. Would you say there's anything that's kind of like helped you along that journey from maybe hiding behind things, both subconsciously, but after realizing that something that's helping you slowly step into the light?
You know, I don't know if you've ever struggled with this, but I'm very much a perfectionist. And there are times where I don't feel I fit the mold of like what a Pilates instructor should look like. And I've had a lot of moments where I think that has been a huge barricade for myself of wanting to put myself on camera. That's why I've delayed membership things that I wanted to do because I just didn't. I'm such a visual person. I didn't feel like it looked the way I wanted it to because I'm just I'm a very like strong person. I'm not, you know, I'm not super fluid. And I realized that those expectations I was putting on myself, that not a lot of people feel that way. This was my own self-judgment because of my own fear base of other things that are projected out there. And no other person that actually gravitated to my space ever felt really that way about how I moved. They always made comments of like, I love how powerful you are, or it's so nice to see another body type be able to do this, because I thought only like dancers could do this kind of stuff. And I think learning to quiet my own voice in my head and listen to my intuition and my heart of where I'm being pulled to, and then listening to how I impact people and having their voices be my guiding light for encouragement was the the thing I had to focus on. Because when you have a critical perfectionist mind, you have to turn it off and like correct yourself and just like sit in that quiet zone. Like, where am I being pulled to? Because I'm being pulled there for a reason. So I got to follow it. And I got to turn off that perfectionist mind. It's still a battle. I deal with it daily.
Yeah, I mean, there's like there's kind of two edges to that, because like sometimes that perfectionist mind, you know, makes you create like beautiful things. Like everything I've ever seen you put out there has been really like aesthetically a beautiful thing, which is a
Thank
good,
you.
great kind of part of that perfectionist mind. But I think a lot of, again, visionary people, we really struggle with this idea of like what is in our head is not what comes out, because our
Yeah.
mind and our vision is a vision. It's always like 10 steps ahead of where we're actually at, you know, like um where what we're embodying now, because we kind of have to catch up to it. But by the time we get there, we have a bigger vision, and we're still not, we're kind of always chasing that. But I think we have we have that kind of picture in our mind, and it can really stop people from putting anything out there ever, because the
Yeah.
visual doesn't match the audio yet. But the thing is that the audience don't know what's in your head.
Yeah.
So to them, it's just a fresh idea or a fresh perspective on something. And I think something like, you know, embodying a different perspective on something like Pilates, or fill in the blank for anyone listening, if you feel like you don't quite fit the mold of whatever your industry is, that's your superpower.
Mm-hmm.
That's your like, because whatever we're putting out there, somebody, when someone sees themselves in it, that's when we create connection, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like, so not everybody is going to be the ballet dancer that Pilates was created for, or not everybody is going to
Yeah.
be this like wave like person. When for yoga teachers, you know, no, everyone's going to be super bendy and really really athletic. If you're a musician, not everybody needs to look like, I don't know, Beyonce. You can
Yeah.
be yourself, and that's like the thing that people really gravitate towards.
I think too, like that. Did you ever read the book Big Magic?
I've listened to the audiobook. That, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And I've read it so long ago and I can't paraphrase it, but just the whole objective idea of it is, it talks muscles that things, ideas come to us, and it's our responsibility to share those ideas. And if we don't share those ideas, it's going to leave us and go to someone else.
Yep.
So why not hone in on those moments of what we're meant to share? And I think it is so important for us to be authentically who we are and share what we're being pulled to, because if there's a reason, I'm a firm believer that there's a reason that we're called to certain things, and it is a tragedy if we don't do it and go after it and use our entire forces and power to do that for people or whatever it is. And um, I there's a lot of driving forces for me of why I'm constantly meandering and where I'm going and where I'm being pulled to. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to like helping people feel seen, heard, empowered to move confidently, live soulfully, and just have expansive lives, and just really believe in themselves. That's kind of, I guess like be a big sister in movement and wellness. I don't know.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. And I think, yeah, it's like in my experience anyway, and like something I speak to a lot is the more we follow those pullings, even if they're not very logical, because spoiler alert, most of the time they're not, um, that kind of
right? Yeah.
brings us to our most like expressed self. Like it brings
Mm.
you home to who you are and brings you to that place where you feel the most abundantly yourself. So I think, yeah, spreading that message to empower people to listen to that and do things like mindful movement that brings you into that space where you can actually listen, because life is so busy and life is so crazy and so loud, there's so much noise everywhere, that to do something that drops you into your body to get quiet enough to actually listen to that, I think is a real gift in the way that we live.
Well, I think one thing too to remember is when you're creating a new path or traveling down a new endeavor, it's going to be hard because it hasn't been paved before. Or if you're adding nuances to something that's different, or people are saying you're crazy, like everything that I have done that has been rewarding, everyone told me not to do it. I'm crazy. Like every single person. There's this thought I was out of my mind every time I did these big leaps into these new directions. And in many ways, I'm very fearless like that because I'm just like, well, being told what's the worst that can happen, I mean, go into that responsibly, my friends. But I think when you take risks at something that you wholeheartedly believe in and like you just trust in yourself and the universe, like I am going to make this happen. Like this is where I'm calling. This is what I have to do. Things are going to work out, especially if you put in the work, if you put in the time, and you're not just being lackadaisical about it. Like you're really just dedicated. Things come into your fruition.
Yeah, for sure. I think a
So,
lot of people will resonate with that idea of other people telling them that they're a bit crazy, or even just feeling like people think that. I think often we think that people think that more than maybe that they actually do. I mean, sometimes you might get family members actually say that to your face, but sometimes we just kind of hold ourselves back just because we think that other people are gonna laugh at us or think we've lost it or think we're delusional. Um, when actually you kind of have to be a little bit delusional to do these things.
I
Is there
know.
anything that kind of helped you navigate that?
Um, trust in it was just trust in the universe and myself. And yeah, the more I've been on like this long self journey of I used to be so like I'm a recovering workaholic. It's we're working on it, but I used to be so numb to different things because I was just would force through like a bulldozer, and sometimes I would not be aware of how much I was tearing myself apart because I was just trying to get things done. And when I started taking time to like get in nature, this seems so cheesy, but I would spend a lot of time in nature and just listen to what would come up just in the quiet. And I found a lot of clarity there and giving myself the space to really listen to myself. I'm a firm believer that ancestors will give you messages when you listen. And just following that and having trust in that because I don't I'm a firm believer like if something is calling you in such a way you're meant to go in that direction, and it's when you are influenced by the outside noises that are starting to pull you away from what your guiding voice is telling you, that's when missteps happen. But I've learned over time that there really is no such thing as loss, they're just valuable lessons. So even like when it feels like a detour, it's not a waste of time because there's things you learn like important nuggets that actually are can be used as in like kind of intellectual investments in the future.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think that something like if anyone listening is like maybe, I don't know, in a space where they're questioning about whether to trust that voice or not, something that I've said to friends of mine, clients of mine, that has really helped them is if that wasn't meant for you, that pulling that you have, Why doesn't everyone have it?
Yeah.
Why do we not all want the same thing?
We lack trust in ourselves,
Mm.
or we block ourselves off. And that's a part of the thing, like that's like through movement, it's we need to like open ourselves up to be ready to receive, to be expansive. And
Yeah.
I think that's important to know that I don't I don't know if you have discovered this on your journey with teaching people with yoga, but I've learned that people are very apologetic about receiving,
Yeah.
you know?
Especially English people. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, this whole world's give take. And that's it, it's circular. And we depend on that to thrive. And we need to just receive with an openness and an appreciation and not have this guilt or this block kind of retreat kind of reaction from receiving any kind of thing. And then vice versa, be open to giving and being generous with others and seeing people for who they are and taking the time to acknowledge their achievements and all of those things and celebrating people. Like that's it. Like that we got to be reciprocal. So
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of comes from like generations of society being in this very masculine focus, this very like
yeah.
mind focused, do the work. It's very analytical, it's very strategic. And there's 150% benefit to having some part of that, but too much of that creates too much rigidity and it creates this mentality that we kind of, if we're not doing, we're not valuable, or if we're not doing, we're not
Right.
worthy. Whereas I think that mindful practices, whatever those are, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, meditation, fill in the blank, something that brings you out of your head and into your body and into that receptive space, puts us into a more like yin, call it feminine space, where we kind of have to go into receiving to kind
Mm-hmm.
of feel worthy of receiving something, a compliment from someone else, receiving insight through our intuition, through wherever you think that comes from. Receiving in kind of a similar light to the way it's written in that book, Big Magic, receiving ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Creatives, we're sponges. We receive
Yeah.
things, information, or like antenna, we're receiving information all the time. And then at some point, it kind of somehow formulates itself into an idea. And whether you believe that that comes from you or what I believe it channels through you, you have to be in a receptive space to notice that.
Yeah. And I'm not someone who's well versed with chakras and things like that, but I do some kind of energy work stuff with some clients, and it's all energy at the end of the day, and I'm a firm believer that what you put out there is what you're going to attract. The kind of energy and the where you sit and how you show up in life is what you're going to attract. And if you're constantly doubting yourself or scared, you're going to attract that kind of energy. And it's important to, I think, just remember that we all have unique powers to us and unique gifts that are much needed. And everyone has a different voice, everyone has a different perspective. And when you really just unapologetically just open yourself up to that, things work out because that's what you're meant to do, in my opinion. That's just been things I've seen, the people who've really thrived around me, like just let it go and went for it. And granted, I'm not saying like they just only wrote it down like I would like this in my life. Like they did the work. They
Yeah.
worked on themselves, their mindset, and showed up.
Yeah,
it
for
is
sure. It's
it is
not like that kind of like from what's that book called? The Secret, where it's like just
yeah.
like write it down and then wait for it to happen and then everything is just going to come be on your plate and you'll be a millionaire tomorrow. It's more
It's
like,
so much more than that.
yeah, there's so
It's
much
so much
more
more.
to it than that. I mean, I am a believer in manifestation, but in the kind of more, there's a kind of a method of it that's been more backed by neuroscience, which is basically, as you say, self-belief and doing the things
Yeah.
and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I did. It's funny. I did this manifestation retreat, I think it was about 2 years ago. And we went through this whole thing of we did a movement class to just get the energy going. And we went through this whole action list of like, what are your dreams? What has blocked you to this point? Like, write it all down and just really focus on what they wanted. And then we put together a vision board. And it was just things of like getting honest with themselves, journaling, and just being surprised what came out when they had like no blockages of just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I felt that way. And oh my gosh. So I had them write themselves a letter and put it in an envelope, and they couldn't open it till a year later. And every person at that retreat accomplished all of their goals for that year. Like,
Wow.
and some of this is like big goals. Like some of them, one of them opened up a clothing store. Another person landed this brand deal where she works for like Sephora Squad and got brand deals like with La Mer. And she was like not doing any of this stuff before then. And it just goes to show when you're like, you show up and you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm taking the action steps to make it happen. I'm energetically, my mind is open to this. I'm ready to receive and share what I love. It happens and people show up for you. It does. So
Yeah, for
that's
sure. I
just,
think half of the magic is something that I think a lot of people don't take the time to intentionally sit and think about what they actually want. Like a coach that I worked with a year ago now, something like that. I worked with her on and off for a long time. She's an amazing woman. Anyway, when I first started working with her, she gave me this journal prompt to do every single morning. And well, there were four
mm,
prompts, and this is a really powerful method to share. Like everyone actually do this every day because it really will change your life. There were, what do I want? What currently tells me I cannot do that? Are those beliefs true? Spoiler alert, they rarely are. What do I choose to believe instead? So that's what do I want? What
mm,
currently tells me I can't do or have that? Are those beliefs true? Probably not. And what do I choose to believe instead? So it was like it took 5 minutes every morning. And I swear to God, doing that every morning just to remind yourself every day of what you're actually desiring in this life, what you're actually working
yeah,
towards, so that then you're not just sort of sleepwalking through the day. Genuinely, it was the most simple, probably the most transformative thing worth every penny that I paid to work with that woman practice for
yeah.
sure. Because I really think that's something that a lot of people don't do. We don't allow ourselves to say, do you know what? Actually, I desire that. I really desire that thing. And I'm going to go a step bigger than people say is realistic for me.
Well, it's also like life can throw us like curveballs. And I think sometimes too, when like we can't always control what is thrown at us, but we can control how we react to it or how we choose to take it in. And when you have routines like that, like with your journal prompts, even if you get kind of clouded in your viewpoints, that brings you back to your guiding light. That brings it illuminates where you're going and it reminds you, like, that's right, this is what I need. And it will quiet down the chaos outside that happens. And I use a form that's kind of like that. I made my vision board into a manifestation journal. So I put all these collages of what I want my life to look like in this journal. And I do. I'm such a woo woo person. I'm woo woo curious. I do tarot readings. I just draw a card every morning, and I journal every morning based on what that card's reflecting, what I think what it means in my life and where I'm going. And the days like there's been a couple of things that have been thrown at me through life because it happens. And the days that I don't look at my journal, that I don't do my routine, I just get derailed for a moment. And it really just goes to show that as silly and um, it seems mundane, these little routines, it's kind of like your accountability and respect to yourself because that's how we show up for ourselves when we're showing up for everyone else, especially as practitioners in the service industry. We need those pillars too. keep our guiding lights on, to keep us clear and not get lost in all of the matter out there, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think also for like creatives putting them work out there, whatever that is, art, music, clothing, whatever else. Something as simple as just reminding or coming home to yourself in the morning like that, or at some point in the day, really kind of cuts through the noise of always creating for other people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when we have to kind of create for ourselves, but then share for other people, of course. But if you kind of skip that moment where you check in with your what you're actually wanting, or where your mind is really out, or kind of give yourself that little mini pep talk, you're kind of always in a pattern of, well, what do they want? What do people, what are
Mm-hmm.
people asking for? You know, what does someone want from me? Instead of,
Yeah.
you know, actually, this is what I want, and this is my vision, and you're coming along with me for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's so important. Like you know, it's so hard too for practitioners, and especially like I know for Pilates instructors and people who are in the wellness industry, to remember that caring for yourself is a necessary thing to do, as well as caring for the people that are in front of you. And I know this is like repeated all the time, but you know, we can only show up for people as well as we care for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And that goes in like so many different channels of life, you know, friendships, relationships, family, but I think also through the art you're creating, whatever that is, an experience like what you do, more physical, like art piece or whatever else. I really think that that kind of overflows into so many different channels. But with
Yeah.
that, I'd love to kind of dive into your work creating like experiences within studios so far, and then like what you want to do moving forwards. I'd love to dive into that.
Oh, yeah. Like what I'm doing now is I'm really stepping into I bringing in more communities together. I really love that community aspect, and having people just feel inspired and enlightened through movement and different experiences and different education and things like that. And I'm definitely moving into more of I've been doing kind of pop-up wellness initiatives at different hotels and resorts, and I'm looking to do more of that in the future. I'm putting right now, well, who knows when this airs, my new brand might be up by then, but I'm stepping away from hiding behind my business name and just stepping into myself. That's kind of me kind of telling myself like I'm going to really own what I say and trust in myself and show up fully as myself and not hide behind other people or other names anymore, unless someone's like hired me to help with their brand development or something. That's a complete different thing. But for myself, I'm just owning who I am and moving forward in that, which I'm excited about. And I'm working on with a current studio in Sammamish with, it's called Aya Pilates, and I'm helping with their program directing, which means I'm developing their classes, teacher training, brand vision, the storylines behind it, and trying to make their vision into something that's tangible and feels like their audience can step into. That it's not just a studio that people clock in, but a place where people feel like they're stepping out of their lives and just stepping into a whole new place for self-care and that kind of world. That's exciting for me too, is getting people's visions to come to life. So
Yeah. Would there be any advice you have for people listening that maybe own a small business or are trying to create a personal brand or put their work out there to make it feel more like a brand? Is there anything that you've learned along your journey now through however many businesses to kind of create that feeling of brand and create that like really different experience that makes a space or a brand itself a memorable thing?
I think know who you're serving. Like a lot of people will focus on like, well, I have everybody, like I have people of all age groups and all audiences, but my thought process is think of that one client that you feel energized after teaching, or like even if you have several, but who's someone that it just that hour goes by so fast and is like your most dedicated client. You wish you had 100 more of them. Think of you're just creating this brand and vision that this client would love and adore, because you'll attract more of those clients. Or you can even just trust on things that you enjoy sharing and just create it. My friend, she's she helps. Her name's Shauna Hayter. She owns We Are a Branch. It's a design studio, and she always she's been encouraging me. She's like, you got to show up as your future self if you want your future to come to you. And she's really kind of helped me like really realize it's like sometimes just it also takes auditing your own life and only having the things that you love that make you feel amazing around you. That includes wardrobe, whatever. And when you show up with the things that you love, you also feel more confident. And that's going to change how people show up for you as well. And personal branding is interesting because it also just depends who you want your audience to be. Like if you're trying to appeal to a luxury audience, sometimes like what I did with my studio is I started going through different websites for hotels, clothing brands they loved, just anything that they are constantly interacting with. And I found keywords that were repeated in all of those brands, and I put them in my bio and throughout the website, because people get comfortable when they see certain repeated words, and they will trust that because they've seen that so many times and they're familiar with that word. So they'll take a moment and invest in you and see if you're a good fit or not. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but those are some ways to go about it,
Yeah,
you know?
I love that tip. That's something that, well, not create getting the word, but something that I get my clients that want help with more marketing and branding, less mindset stuff, is kind of because a lot of them get really fixated on the quote unquote competition, which I think is a lot of the like bro speak of business coaching have told you to look for the competition, and then kind of that's all you're fixated on is this being this battle. But actually, like, think about the lifestyle of the person that you in your wildest of dreams, like think of the person and then think a bit bigger of who you would really really love to have your piece of art in their house, who would really love to have your product, who would really love to listen to your music or experience whatever you're going to put out there. What else do they do in life, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, go and sit in those hotels, listen to what people are saying. What shoes are they wearing? What bag are they carrying? Like, what watch are they wearing if it's more kind of menswear? And then how can you kind of not manipulate yourself to kind of squeeze into that box, but like, how can you sit comfortably within that kind of ecosystem of brands that that person is already obsessed with?
Well, I think it's important too that whoever you're trying to attract, you got to be comfortable in sitting in those spheres. Because
Yeah.
if you're trying to attract an audience that you're not comfortable with, or that's not, you don't have some of the similarities in lifestyle or even just in interests, that's when inauthenticity happens. Like you've got to have some similar traits there and be really clear with yourself of like, okay, I know this is who I am. This is where I'm comfortable sitting. This is where I'm all of these things. And things unfold. And two, like the more you're in, like in whatever field you're doing, the longer you're in it, you know what lights you up and where you like the kind of audience that just you really work best with. And even if you can work with a lot of different kinds of people, you want to feel energized with your work. You don't want to feel like bogged down. And as you get better and really step more in your zone, you'll attract more and more people that energize you. And it just takes time and awareness and being honest with yourself. And that's hard because sometimes people are going to give you advice and it's going to be, pardon my language, it's going to be shit.
Yeah.
Like you just kind of have to just be clear of like what's been working, what hasn't. And like what you were saying with the competition, I think it's important to, for market research purposes of seeing how um, the demographics responding to certain people who have similar fields, but you don't want to copy their business strategies because you ideally you want to create something new. You want something that feels fresh and it's going to attract a different audience. But you know, there's nothing wrong with looking around like, okay, they're full at this time of day, or like, okay, this time frame seems to be good. This price point doesn't seem to be working. Those are one thing, but don't look at people as competition. It's just market research purposes, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. It's more just an understanding of, I think when you do that market research angle, then you gain a more of an understanding of what similar people who want a similar kind of thing, what they're responding to, I guess.
Yeah. And two, what you give is, I remember I had this one situation with this Pilates instructor, and she was so convinced that we were trying to, like, we were opening up in an area that she wanted to open up in. And she was so convinced that we were just trying to step on her toes because she was so territorial. And I was like, you know what? Here's our business plan. Here's what we intend to do inside the studio. We're attracting different people. I teach completely different than you. This is not going to be a threat to you at all. You know, like we're not even going to attract the same people. You're going to be fine. And she got so upset. And I'm a firm believer that when you are so concerned that someone's going to step on your toes rather than just like barricading that noise out and just showing up for your people, you're going to do better. Just
Oh, for
you're
sure.
show up for your people. Who cares what's going on outside? Just don't worry about that stuff. That's where you get lost. That's where mistakes happen. That's where, and you affect the energy that you're working in. And people pick up on that. They can feel that like tension and that anxiousness. Like you just got to have trust things work. And again, losses are lessons. There's always opportunities around the corner. And there's always time for growth and expansion. And for that's like the wonderful thing is we can create opportunities for ourselves if we have trust in it.
Yeah, for sure. There's again,
So
like, there's so many layers to that. Because I think, as you say, it can, it just puts so much tension into your body, constantly worrying about something like that. I've definitely encountered that within the yoga space and even in like within the creative space of people kind of looking at others and saying like, oh, you're stealing clients from me just because you're teaching in this area, or in a similar way with artists and everything. And it's really, it comes from this real, going kind of back to the manifestation thing, this whole energetic field of lacking something. You know, that
yeah,
there isn't enough to go around, so you're stealing these people from me, but that doesn't mean that more won't come, you know. Whereas if you just move from a space of there's more than enough, more than enough people that are
yeah,
going to fall in love with my work, more than enough people that want to come to my class, there's more than enough people that out there that could be raving fans of my music. And to go on again with those blinders on of just, I'm just going to fully own what I do, stay in
yeah,
alignment with my vision, and the people will come.
yeah. And
It's
being confident with what you do. Yeah,
yeah.
don't waver on that. You know, it's you got to have trust. And like over the years, as I've gotten older, I've learned like the more confident, the more you really stand in what you believe in and you don't waver from that. You're just like really clear on this is my purpose. This is what I do. This is what I serve. And I don't meander away from that at all. And you stand in it confidently, like you're foolproof. And I had a lesson recently, and I was kind of confronted with um, stepping down from a position because I noticed something was very toxic in the situation and it wasn't being heard. So I just politely said I was going to step away from it. But I was very clear and just knew like, okay, I'm going to be sad if this doesn't work, but I know there's things ahead of us and or ahead of me, and things will be fine. And literally the next day, that person was let go. Everything just kind of fell into place. And it kind of felt like a lesson of trust, one, like being rewarded for trusting yourself and not having any kind of self doubt. And also for the other person, a lesson of not losing faith in the people that have your back, that kind of thing. And it's just really eye opening how the universe rewards you when you constantly, when you're confronted with something that's terrifying, that you could lose something that is very important to you. And you just let go, like, I'm just going to trust how it rewards you in other ways coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it rewards like tenfold when you take that leap and kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to trust that I'm strong enough to survive whatever's coming, and I'm going to stand
Yeah.
by my values and what I believe in and what my vision, and then we'll see what happens. I think it always kind of, you always are rewarded somehow by some left of field magical thing happening.
I know it's gotten so like spiritual, but hopefully it's not too out there. So, but I guess, that's kind of it. Like we're meant to we're spiritual beings in many ways. Like we're meant to be connected. We're meant
Yeah.
to,
In my experience, being on the creative path in whatever channel that's going through, and that often meaning that you're out there alone, kind of lone wolfing your way through something, I
yeah,
find that you have to, or it's a huge benefit. I'm not going to say anyone has to do anything because that's totally not true. Do whatever you feels right for you, but I find it's of huge benefit to have some way of being able to cultivate a radical amount of trust. And that can come through so many different channels. Spirituality, for some people it's religion, but I think it, you kind of have to. I think that's why a lot of creatives are very spiritual beings, because you got to trust something. Otherwise you're out there in the middle of
yeah,
the ocean on your own. you know I think it's hard not to follow this path without having a little bit of that.
yeah. Because I mean, doubt will pull you under.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. And it's
it's
we're,
definitely that anchor.
yeah, as I said earlier, we are sponges, and I think that that's why often we are more sensitive. That's why, creative people are statistically more likely to experience anxiety or depression, because we are naturally more sensitive, because we're naturally more receptive. So I
Mhm.
think to have things that bring you into that space of belief, trust in yourself, then trust in the universe, or whatever label you want to give that, and trust in your vision. That's the things that keep us sane. And that's like something that really drove me to create what I'm to create Maverick Mind, create this channel, because um, I think that so many really, really talented people go to waste or never have their ideas kind of put to light, because they keep themselves in that drowning space or treading water space, instead of
Yeah,
finding ways to cultivate that trust and cultivate that vision and just like really go after what they want. um so yeah, I think that we're curious and spiritual, you know it's all a benefit, I think.
well, it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, it's
definitely does.
terrifying to
Yeah.
like step in your own.
Yeah,
So, and then
absolutely.
too, like you said with like the lone wolf thing, gosh, I'm like I feel that sometimes. I think of myself like in that ways because sometimes it gets so lonely, especially when you're in that transition phase of like you're stepping out of that scarcity mindset or that shell, and you're transitioning to just showing up. Like sometimes people don't always respond very well to that,
Mm.
and it's it gets lonely, and sometimes you just kind of have to remember that It's not you, it's their own thing that's just being projected, you know.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think when you do that, when you kind of step out from the cocoon and start putting things out there, we expect people to respond like that, like right away. And then a lot of people kind of, that's where what I call post and ghosting happening. So when you like put yourself out there and then people don't respond, so you kind of like go back into the shell, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. But
yeah,
and that's totally normal. And I think I've definitely done that so many times. But I think the more you can kind of slow, kind of have less time in between being in the shell and coming out again, create a little bit of
yeah,
momentum, and just be patient, be really, really patient with your journey and trust that things are going to happen in divine timing. Things are going to come. If you have that pulling, it's because some version of you in the future has already got it, I think.
well, I think it's interesting too, there's so many quiet um followers, you know, there's so many quiet supporters that we don't even realize are out there. Like I remember this is before we had our original conversation, but I was thinking like no one cares what I have to say. Like I was just doubting myself a lot. I was just like, am I doing the wrong thing? Like, what is wrong with me? I was going through that whole thing of just not like just going like no, out the door. We're not doing this anymore. And there was this girl that came to my little mat class, and after the class she told me like how she has felt so seen and resonated through just my silly little Instagram posts. Maybe they're not silly because they've connected with people, but you know, there wasn't big engagement there. And but there was more people that I found out who were quietly following and
Yeah.
resonated and connected to the posts. They just never reacted. They're just like watched or listened and no response. And so sometimes I think it's important, or even just for our own self preservation, of like there might be someone that this is really important that I need to share this for, or someone out there is going to connect with this, and it's my responsibility to share this if I'm being pulled to do this, you know. And I think that gets easier over time when we learn this isn't about us. Like it's
Yeah.
like stop being so egocentric and just share,
Yeah.
let it be received. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let it be received. I think I've told this story before, but that coach I spoke about earlier with the journal prompts, I was following her for a year or something, barely engaged with anything, and then signed up to her program. She was probably like, "Who the hell are you?" But yeah, I definitely do that. I think I've definitely seen that now in this space of people are being a bit more silent, less likely, less kind of inclined to like everything. But I think also social media's kind of given us this like really weird perspective that you know, if you get 20 likes or something, or if 200 people see a video that you post, that's not enough. Whereas actually, if you're on the street and 20 people came up to you and said, like, hey, that's awesome what you just said, or if you are again putting your artwork out there and 200 people saw it, like that's
Yeah.
mad. You'd be overwhelmed probably and feel
Yeah.
like a bit yeah, overwhelmed of so much energy being around you. But because it's just a number on a little phone, people get so tied up with that not being enough. And again, it's just like you never know who's in that 200. You never know what that 20 people that liked it or the other people that saw it and didn't like it. You don't know if it didn't just change their life. You have no idea. We cannot
Yeah.
control that.
And I think it's important to remember that as much as social media can be used as a very impactful tool, and it's a great way to engage and connect with people, it's also was designed to condition us to stay on the platform and desire those likes. And the more awareness and conscientious we are cognizant we are for that, what that app, these apps were designed to, how they were designed to mentally affect us, it's easier to kind of recognize that like no, like just do what you do, show up where you go, turn it off. not that deep,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a tool that can either use you or you can use it. Don't let it use you.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah,
So
always I think that's definitely a great kind of mantra to have. Use it so it doesn't use you, and always create more than you consume, because then
yeah,
comparisonitis sets in and it's never a good place to be, especially as a creator. Because I think also as creatives, then sometimes we can take on other people's voices a bit, whether that's through what you're putting out online or whether that's actually through your work. I think we can see who's doing really well and think maybe we should mimic that person, and you lose your own authentic voice a bit. And I think that that's your own authentic voice is what's going to magnetize people to you in the first place. So however you can preserve that, um, that's kind of the relationship you have with things like social media, or even just being really in circles of your industry, I think.
it's an interesting balance, you know, because and too, like when you dive in, I'm not sure like if you dive deep into like some of the marketing stuff too, but like I'm so fascinated by marketing and branding. And every morning, like after I do my little routine while I'm getting ready, I listen to podcasts about marketing strategies. So many people have opposing ideas that
Yeah.
contradict each other. Like some people say niche down, some people say don't niche down, just highlight yourself. And I'm like, you know what? Clearly this worked for both ends.
Yeah.
So just show up wherever it connects with you and do your thing, because clearly both of these have worked for certain people. And there's
Yeah.
always strategy behind certain things. But like you said, like make sure it doesn't convolute like your essence. Like let your essence shine through.
Yeah, exactly. And I always think like with anything, there's routine, there's structure, there's rules, and then there's also breaking routine can be healthy too.
Yeah.
Breaking structure can be healthy too. Breaking the rules creates, innovation. So I think with things like marketing strategies, that's something that a lot of creatives avoid like the plague, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not the bit that we like. However, having some kind of strategy brings a lot of sanity. But as you say, there are so many conflicting opinions. Whenever I'm working
Yeah.
with clients one on one, I often just say like, okay, so what feels good to you? What like feels like strategic enough to give you sanity, but freedom enough to not feel rigid to you or to feel authentic to you? Like, what's going to actually make you feel excited to follow that strategy or
Yeah.
excited to um, follow that advice or whatever else they're trying to do, because excitement is the driving force of a lot of the things that we want to achieve, right?
Yeah. Keeps us creating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
If you don't
sure.
love what you're doing, you're not going to be consistent with it or you're not going to keep doing it.
No, definitely. I definitely find for a lot of creators, we have to have our heart in something. We have to love it. Otherwise, we're just really unbothered. I don't know. Is that maybe that's just me? I
Oh
don't
no,
know.
no. Yeah. I've been in environments where I've learned really quickly. I'm just like, I have to kind of step outside the boundaries and be creative in some way, or I'm just going to go stir crazy.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it it's nice to challenge expectations and just kind of stretch your legs and see like how much, and not like just how much can we step outside the lines and see what we can create. That's kind of fun, in my opinion. It's like, can we do something new with this? Can we try to bring something different? And one of my same friend Shauna, we did a podcast a couple of years ago. We're talking about how she never looks for inspiration through other designers because she doesn't want to find herself accidentally replicating them.
Mm.
So she looks at fashion magazines or architecture magazines or interior design, and she looks for shapes and things to inspire her graphic design work because she's pulling from something that's not in that same field. So she's having to stimulate her brain in a different way. And I'm like, that's exactly how I kind of look at like when I get inspiration of how I want to create movement online or like how I want to share things on Instagram. Is like I'm following different things that are not Pilates related
Yeah.
because I don't want to do the same stuff because that also seems like kind of monotonous to me. It's got to feel, I want to feel like I'm stepping into a new world. you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's the work of like visionary living or creating innovation is, I think, kind of, as we said earlier, like putting your blinders on sometimes to what other people are doing in your industry specifically, and
Yeah.
getting inspiration from other places. And I think, like, for me, that's, I definitely, I'm so the same. Like, I don't listen to podcasts that are around the same topic, really, except ones that I'm like really obsessed with, which is like only Zane Lowe's podcast, but that's a different story for another day. I don't really follow like other yoga teachers online when I'm talking about yoga things. I don't follow other like creative coaches online, really, because I just think that you can really take on other people's voice, and then we're all saying the same thing, and then what's that doing for anyone?
I will say I love your branding, by the way. Like
Oh,
I
thank
just I
you.
love how you present everything and it's just so beautiful. And like
Oh,
that's you did such a beautiful job on your website, Instagram, how you share your story and everyone else's. Like love it, by the
thank you
way.
very much. Likewise.
I need so oh
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Missoni, for coming on the show. I think I could talk to you all day about so many different
I
twists and turns of
know.
everything.
We'll have
um,
another opportunity. It's gonna
oh, for
happen.
sure.
So
For sure.
yeah.
100% for sure for that. Can you let everyone know? Obviously, I'll put the links to where everyone will find you in the show notes, but can you maybe just say for anyone that's on their phone right now, where can people find you online, on Instagram or wherever else?
You can find me on my website, which should be up by the time this airs, which is missonilanza.com, Instagram, Missoni Lanza, YouTube, Missoni_Lanza. And then I'm also a Pinterest addict. So if you like beautiful things, dive into my Pinterest. It's so fun. It's up there. You can find me there. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I love Pinterest. And side note, I think it's like a really great space to not fall into that comparison trap, but also just get inspiration, because you don't know where those images have really come from, but there's just a really inspiring space. So yeah, definitely. I'll link all those spaces down below. And thanks again so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you, Ellie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very soon.